This is What Do You Bring to the Table, a series made by youth for youth that aims to explore the many, many career paths available within our Canadian food systems. By interviewing industry leaders across the country, we get a first-hand look at the various career opportunities available to the next generation, with a particular focus on equity and sustainability. We want to thank the Gay Lea Foundation and the Ontario Trillium Foundation for their generosity in supporting this project. Please visit our website www.seeds.ca/schoolfoodgardens and sign up for our free monthly e-newsletter to stay involved. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. Links to those are on our website. If you like what we are doing, please drop a like, review, or comment. Or if you have the means to, contribute with a monetary donation through our website. Thanks for listening. This is episode 4, Gabrielle and Ben.
Hello, I'm Gabrielle, and I'm a volunteer at Waterloo Region School Food Gardens. In this interview, I'll be interviewing Benjamin Murray, who is a program coordinator at Ontario Fruits and Vegetables Growers Association. In this interview, I'll be asking him questions all about program coordinating and all that other good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. My name is Ben Murray. I'm the program coordinator at the Ontario Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association. So I've been in the role just over 3 years now. I started right out of school. It was lucky. I just sort of landed into the job in a neat way. So yeah, I've been there 3 years now. It's been a bit of a roller coaster, obviously going through a couple of COVID years, but it's a great place to work. And thanks for having me.
So nice to have you on. Our first question for you is, what is the purpose of your organization?
Yeah, for sure. So it's a bit complicated. You might have to bear with me a moment here, but I guess just sort of in simplest terms, we like to say we're the voice for fruit and vegetable farmers across Ontario. So we do a lot of advocacy, sort of policy, government relations type work on behalf of fruit and vegetable growers across the province. Where it's a little more complicated, I would say we're also a umbrella organization. So what that means is we have a number of other what we call commodity organizations that are members of us. So there's several what we call commodity organizations across the province. So there's the apple growers of Ontario, there's the asparagus growers of Ontario, tender fruit growers of Ontario. So there's tons of these groups that are actually members of ours. So they all sort of have input in terms of the work and stuff that we're working on. But sort of, I guess, the simplest way, like I said at the beginning, we'd like to say we're the voice for the fruit and vegetable growers across Ontario, I would say.
Our second question is, within your organization, what role do you play?
Yeah, for sure. So I do quite a bit around the organization. I'm almost, I like to say, a bit of a Swiss Army knife, but I would say the sort of the primary role that I have, we also have 2 school programs that we help run. So we have what's called the Fresh from the Farm School program that runs right now, September through the end of November primarily. I like to describe it, think sort of the traditional chocolate bar fundraiser that you would have done in grade school, but substitute that with fresh Ontario grown apples and root vegetables. So we're working through that right now. Schools are fundraising through September and half of October, and then we deliver throughout the province directly to schools in the month of November. So it's sort of a neat little fundraiser, sort of a nice alternative to some of the more traditional, not so healthy, I guess, options that you would see when you were growing up in schools. So like I said, we run that goes September through basically the end of November into early December. And then the other school program that I help with is called the Northern Fruit and Vegetable Program. That one runs January through June. And it's actually, so the Ministry of Health funds that program. And what we do is we handle the logistical part of it, of getting fruits and vegetables. We send one fruit, one vegetable up to schools across Northern Ontario each week. So it's primarily to introduce kids to new fruits and vegetables and get them into the hands of kids especially across Northern Ontario, where it's a lot harder in a lot of those communities to access fruits and vegetables. So we do sort of the coordinating of the logistics and getting the fruits and vegetables from point A up to point B, which can be quite a lot of work in times where we have to fly into some communities. So it's almost like planes, trains, and automobiles to get the produce up there sometimes. But it's a pretty neat program that, like I said, the Ministry of Health helps fund. So that's the two school programs are primarily where my role falls within the organization.
I see. If I may ask you another question on that topic, do you see different perspectives often when working in your role?
Yeah, for sure. So like the Northern program, like it's you sort of take a lot of things for granted, especially like me growing up in Southern Ontario, where sort of fruits and vegetables are always accessible, and you go to the farmers market and they're sort of everywhere. But these perspectives from some of these communities in Northern Ontario, like I look at a map at some of the places that we're going into, and it's pretty wild how people are like living this far up north. So it is, yeah, like I said, you sort of take it for granted growing up and just having all that fruits and vegetables. But up there, obviously, they can't grow it up there, and fruits and vegetables, right? They're so perishable. So transporting it up there is an absolute hassle because by the time it gets there, mostly it's already gone bad. So it is pretty neat when we get feedback from some of these communities in terms of like some of these kids have never seen some of the more unique fruits and vegetables. So when they get it up there, it's a pretty neat experience for them. So in a way, it's a bit rewarding. But yeah, like I said, it is neat to see that different perspective for sure.
Our third question for you is, what is the goal slash idea of your organization, and why is it vital to you?
Uh, so the main goal, I think it all sort of centers around the sustainability of fruits and vegetables in the province. And it's vital to me, but I think it's vital to everybody throughout the province as well. Um, like you see climate change affecting like Florida right now and the droughts in California. So getting harder and harder to grow stuff there. So I think growing local is becoming a lot more important. And so that sustainability of us being able to grow food in our backyard, what you could say, is becoming ever more important. And us being able to help the farmers and the international farm workers that are so vital to us just grow that food. I think that's sort of one of the more important aspects of the job and the organization.
Especially when looking at how prices have also gone up, I think it's a very big goal that a lot of people think about on their day to day lives.
No, absolutely, you're right. Yeah, we're seeing the not just fruits and vegetables, but the prices, of course, of everything skyrocketing right now. So you're right. The more we can do local, the better for sure.
Our fourth question for you is, how do you usually begin your process of coordinating a program?
Yeah, so luckily for me, like both of the programs that I work with, they're new to me obviously when I started, but they're not new programs. They've been around for probably 10 plus years each. So the sort of the standard in terms of what we do to start the program is sort of set in stone at this point. So it's not something new that I have to come up with each year. I think yeah, the biggest thing is just organization and preparation too, right? Because like we saw with COVID, you never know what's going to get thrown at you. So the more you can prepare in advance of these programs that we run, the easier it makes your job when something interesting gets thrown at you. So I think yeah, the biggest thing is preparation. But like I said, luckily for me, I'm in a position where it's not something brand new. We sort of have a set process each year that we sort of follow, and that helps us start the program each year.
I think, especially with organizing projects and also events, if you had to start all over again, it would get very confusing and destabilizing for you.
Exactly, right. And you learn so much each year. Like you learn new stuff that you want to incorporate next year. So you have to constantly evolve. You obviously can't just stay on the same tracks each year because you may come across things that make things easier, make things better to do the next year. So it's a lot of learning, but yeah, like I said, preparation and just making sure you're ready to go each year is probably the key thing for sure.
Our fifth question for you is, what trends do you see when you're coordinating?
What trends do I see? I don't know if there's any that sort of hit the top of my head right now. I would say maybe the biggest trend is that sort of like I said, with you never know what's going to get thrown at you. Just that I don't know, nothing stays consistent. That you never know what you're going to run into, especially with COVID. Like we had to constantly adapt and change to the programs. Like especially with schools being closed, we were delivering sort of to sites and different places across Ontario that would then deliver to students that weren't in classes. So you're constantly changing what you have to do and the rules within schools too. Like we couldn't enter schools for a long time. So the biggest trend is maybe that things are always changing and you're always having to adapt. So no, that wasn't a great answer to the question, but that's sort of, there's nothing too particular that really jumps in my mind in terms of the trends that come across.
Our sixth question for you, even though you kind of mentioned it in your introduction, is that what led you to pick this job slash role?
Yeah, so like growing up, agriculture was never something on my radar or on my mind. So it's really sort of just a luck. It's like the classic saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. But my neighbor, my old neighbor, works for the organization, and I had just graduated school, and he mentioned that they were looking for somebody to help with the school program. So it was just a good luck of right timing. So that's how I sort of landed into the role. But like I said, agriculture was never really on my mind. And I think like sort of before we hopped on here, I mentioned how this video series is super awesome because it introduces people to roles within agriculture, right? Like I think, like I know growing up, and I think a lot of kids are the same. You think agriculture and you think farmers, and that's sort of the only job within the industry, right? But there's so much more out there, and that's why I think this video series does a great job in highlighting all those jobs out there. So agriculture is an awesome industry, and like I said, there's so much out there. So that's sort of how I landed into it. There's no not a great story there, but a lot of luck and timing on my part. So, but I couldn't be more happy. This is where it landed me. So,
It's really interesting how your story is very similar to previous interviewers, and how they've mentioned that it's not exactly that they started out looking for this role, but instead their connections and their surroundings got them interested.
right, it's so true, and yeah, you hear that more and more as you talk to more people, right? Like you always dream, or when you're a kid, whatever, you want to be like the doctor, lawyer, whoever, but obviously it doesn't always go that way. So yeah, I think just keeping your eyes open and being open to trying new things and maybe going out of your comfort zone a little bit. So you're right, you don't always expect to where or know where you're going to go, but luckily for me, it brought me to an awesome organization. So couldn't be more happy.
Um, our seventh question for you is, how do you see your role impacting people in your community?
I think it sort of goes back to a little bit what I talked about, sustainability and just making sure that we have local produce available for everybody. At the end of the day, that's sort of what we're trying to do. We're trying to make the lives of the farmers and the international farm workers who grow our food, make their lives easier so they can do their jobs. So I think it's important to make sure that they have that opportunity to do their jobs. Yeah, it's tough with the school programs, I guess, because we don't deal directly with what I would call my community. Like I said, it's a lot more focused on whether it's the northern communities or other places in Ontario. But I think, like I talked about, that whole sustainability thing is really key. across the province, including my community, but also all of Ontario. So I think that's sort of the key there.
Our eighth question for you is there something you strive to achieve or keep achieving, and why?
Yeah, that it may sound a bit cliche, but just try to work hard and keep doing the best job you can. Like I said, sort of, we're trying to make the lives of the farmers and the international farm workers easier. So any way we can do that. Yeah, I don't have a great answer for that one, unfortunately, but hopefully I summed it up a little bit there. I think that's sort of the main thing.
Our ninth question for you is how accessible is information about your role? Do you think it's easy for teens to find and understand?
In terms of like my particular role, I don't know if it's super. I know I have like a biography on the website and everything. Like you can find some information there, but like my job title, program coordinator, right? Like that's extremely vague. Like there's a lot of people have that title, but it obviously changes drastically depending on the organization and programs that you're working with. But in terms of like teens gaining access about the job and the role, I think, like I said, it's like when you're little and you think agriculture, you don't think there's much out there. But I do think that's getting better. Like there's a lot of sort of different events that I'm now being introduced to, fairs, stuff like the Royal Agricultural Winter Fair. And there's a lot of other different events and stuff that are, I think, introducing kids at younger ages to just sort of the roles that are out there within agriculture. So I think that's super neat to see. And there's still work to do, but I think it's gotten a lot better from at least when I was growing up, I would say.
You mentioned how when you were growing up there was less information. If there was such information that we have now when you were younger, do you think it would have impacted your perspective earlier?
Potentially, I think it maybe just would have opened my eyes to realizing like there was a lot more out there than like the classic, like I already mentioned, sort of doctor, lawyer type jobs. Like unfortunately, like yeah, it's a nice job to have, but they're not for everybody, and there's just so much more out there. So I definitely do think like if I had a little more information out there when I was little, and I think the internet's obviously playing a huge part in that now, where kids can see that there's so much out there. So I don't know how much necessarily would have changed my life, but like for sure, I mean, yeah, just knowing that there's so much more out there, it's definitely a little bit more comforting, I guess you can say, when you're growing up.
Our last question for you is do you have any tips for researching this job as someone who is interested?
Any tips that I would have? I think I've sort of talked about this a bit already. Like just keep your eyes open. Like there's so much out there that you probably don't know. Make those connections. You sort of brought that up earlier. Talk to people. Always keep your eyes open. Visit fairs and events, and the people are always at the booths and stuff when you're attending these sort of fairs. Using the Royal, for example, like they're always so happy to talk about what they do and how they were brought into their role and stuff. So ask away, and yeah, don't be afraid to ask questions, because like I said, they're happy to ask, and for the most part they're super knowledgeable about where they're working and the topics. So if you have a passion, definitely reach out to people, because they would be more than happy for the most part to talk to you and let them know their journey, and hopefully that can in a way help out your journey to finding out something that you're passionate about and that you want to do when you grow up. So I think that would be the best tip I got.
Thanks for listening to this episode of What Do You Bring to the Table? See you again soon.